This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, episode number 54 on deck. Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everybody had a safe and enjoyable exit of 2018 and welcoming of 2019. Got a great show on deck for you tonight. We've got Dean Johnson joining us, the owner of the Niagara Drag Strip. Going to be an exciting one. Jason joining us in studio. I was thinking about it today. I think it's been almost 6 weeks since we've seen you.
Yeah, actually, because the last show that we did, I did remote. So
and then we took some time off there, and that brings us to where we are here. Everything went well with Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, no complaints. How about yourself?
Went good.
Yeah.
Went very well.
That's good.
I'm anxious to.
So today you did remember to turn the audio on when we went live?
I did. Yeah.
I did. so the 6 weeks you practiced while we were gone.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Yeah, and everything looks like it's working the way that it's supposed to. So I haven't forgot anything in 6 weeks, and it's questionable if I've learned anything either. So, but it's nonetheless, it is on its feet. Yes, my lovely wife got me a 4-rack smoker for Christmas, and we haven't had that unpacked yet, but it's going to get a workout, especially when summer gets here.
I would say, okay. So you don't like smoking when it's 30 degrees outside?
I want to get better at it before I smoke when it's 30 degrees outside.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But yeah, we have a good kickoff to 2019, though, having Mr. Dean Johnson join us tonight. I'm really excited. Niagara Drag Strip was certainly one of the premier drag strips of its day when it was up and operational, which wasn't for a really long time, but just a really great, a lot of great history there, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Mr. Johnson's take on the whole thing.
So without that being said, Dean, you're hanging out on the phone. How are you?
I am.
How are you this evening? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm honored. Thank you. I'm fine.
That's good. So, Jason alluded to it there a minute ago about how it wasn't there for a long time, but it sure was a good time. What are some of the things that stick out in your memory right off the top about Niagara, and then we'll get into a little bit of the history about how the track came to be.
Okay. Well, probably the thing that made Niagara so successful was I really was very fortunate when I was doing the hiring, and I had a crew that just was so good that they made me look good. They were the whole reason that Niagara ran so well.
Sure. If you want to look good, surround yourself with good people, right? Yeah,
I was really quite blessed, and a lot of the people are still around, and we see them pretty regularly, a lot of them. And it's kind of nice, actually.
So this track is situated in Lockport, or what's left of the track at this point. It closed operations in 1974.
Yeah,
1974. Never opened up again for the 1975 season, and as I understand it, there was never a pass made after that on the track, right?
It probably got more use after than when it was running. I know just to correct you a little bit, that track was, if you go to the Niagara Falls Airport, we were parallel to the longest runway on the north side. So it was actually at Niagara Falls, not Lockport.
Okay.
And I lost my train of thought there, but it opened in 61, and then we closed in 74. That was the last year that it ran.
Having the airport as the backdrop. I mean,
well, it's not only the airport, but it's an Air Force base. It's Niagara Falls Air Force Base that's the backdrop. So Bell Labs is there. It was still Bell Labs in its heyday, I guess, at that point in time. But yeah, I'm sure. I mean, and Mr. Johnson and I talked very briefly earlier today. And I'm sure I was there, though I have no recollection of it. Mr. Johnson, I'm sure you could see fighters flying, taking off and landing, right?
Well, we were immediately north of the airport, and their long runway was 28 right. If you fly, you would understand that. And actually, we would be 28 right. We were so parallel to them. And actually, at one night race, we had a C-130 lineup for our racetrack, and they at the last moment figured out that they weren't where they should be, and they made a real good flyby. It was really exciting.
Yeah, that is super cool.
So you almost had a C-130 land on the. Did I understand that right? You almost had him land on the track.
Well, he would have landed. I don't know that he would have stopped. He would have. He'd have been hard pressed to get it down, and he'd have got it down all right. But get to the stop, I don't know. He'd have been hard pressed to do that. So, but I at one time I had a friend that used to visit with a small airplane, a little single engine airplane. And one time it wouldn't start, and when he finally got it started, during intermission we let him take off. So he just called the tower and said, "We're leaving in 28 right," and they said, "We don't know what you're talking about, but you're cleared to go."
Yeah, go ahead, get out of here.
When I was a kid, and I'm talking years ago.
But oh yeah. But we would see, because it was a military base, we would see a lot of, at the time, parachute drops. They were flying C-130s, and they would practice dropping items, and sometimes skydivers, and we would get, a lot of times we get a good air show thrown in on top of the racing. So it was a little different. So
yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, it really was, and every once in a while I have a website that is up, and there'll be a picture of an airplane or see what they had. It wasn't a 130. I can't think what it was, but it was a twin engine military aircraft, and I've got pictures of the parachutes coming out the back, and of course you're looking across the drag strip. And on one occasion we did have a bunch of skydivers come in, and the wind was wrong, and we had to stop operations while we chased down the skydivers as they got dragged across the runway.
Oh,
that was kind of
interesting. Never a dull moment. So
no, and it was no big deal. It was windy enough, and once we were able to grab the chutes and collapse them, then everybody went home. But it was entertaining. Good intermission.
So I guess, kind of taking a step back. So you said the track opened in '61?
Yes.
So I guess I was going to ask, what was your background kind of going into the thought process of saying, hey, you know what, I'd like to open a drag strip?
I was a street racer.
Okay.
And my father, and I hung around when I was a kid. There was a speed shop, and it was run by a fellow by the name of Jerry Hammond. And my father got talking to Hammond, and they thought maybe it would be a good place to get some of us guys off the streets and onto a track. And so he and Jerry Hammond conspired to build this racetrack, and it was 4,000 feet long and 60 feet wide. And they built it, and I was there when the equipment came on site, and shortly after that, I got drafted.
Oh,
so I spent from November '61 through November '63. I had a home away from home, courtesy of the government.
Okay.
And when I got out, there was some problems with the track and who was going to run it. And I got talking to my father, and he asked me if I was interested in running it. Well, I had no background, and I was concerned about that. And he said, well, why don't you go to California, which is where all the drag racing was happening.
Yeah.
And he said, go visit as many tracks as you can and learn what you can. So I flew out to Los Angeles, and I went. There was racing pretty much every night, and I would go up and I'd give them a sob story at the gate about how I wanted to open a drag strip, and they would always let me in. And I had free range of everything. I would go to the tower. I just had free range.
Wow.
And so I spent a couple of weeks there, and I went to a lot of races. And I thought, geez, how hard could it be? You open the gates and 100 dragsters drive in. Which, man, this is really simple. And I went over to NHRA, and I met everybody over there. And in those days, you'd walk in and you'd say, oh, hello, Mr. Parks, how are you? And we would talk. And you knew everybody. And the same with Klondike. Klondike was the timing system of choice at the time. And I went over there, and I met Ollie, and just wonderful people. I really was blessed in finding all these wonderful people. And when I came home, we started to work on drag racing.
Wow, that's...
And the track had run for several, like 2.5 years. And so there was some background. You know, some of the cars were out there, but there were no dragsters to speak of.
Right.
Very few.
Right. Yeah, I was to say, you know, that in that 61, 62 time frame, I mean, that was still, you know, organized drag racing, I guess I will say, was still kind of in its infancy at that point in time. So it probably was a good time to spend learning, I guess, if you will, at that point in time, because it probably wasn't really until a few years later that it kind of really took off, right, and became immensely popular.
Well, it was very big in California and out west, but back here, we ran a more mostly gassers and what we call comp cars.
Yep.
And stock, super stock, and the dragsters did come after a while, but we never saw the quality and quantity of cars that they had out west. But it didn't matter because we had such a high quality of cars that were not necessarily dragsters, but they were a little bit lower classes, but they were still going pretty fast.
Right.
And very expensive.
Yeah, and I think overall, I think, you know, though, like I said, I mean, what you're comparing to is, you know, you're comparing to the, you know, the pinnacle of the sport, you know, basically out in California at that point in time. But if you were to look at the cars that raced at Niagara, you know, compared to, you know, what we have really around here now for the last 30 years, I mean, there were a lot of just really, really spectacular cars, big names, everything else. So it's not like you didn't have any of the big names come out here. I mean, you had a ton of big names coming out to Niagara.
Well, what we did is I had a fellow in 63 he called me up he was from Toronto. His name was Ian Micklethwaite. And he called me up and he said, I'd like to come down and talk to you about advertising and promotion. And I didn't know anything, and I said, sure. So he came down, and we talked, and he was a young kid like myself. We were pretty young. And we were jumping up and down and sitting on the back of the couch, and it was pretty interesting how excited we were. And he and I joined forces, and he really was very good at promotions. And so Niagara, we ran a lot of shows, and so if anybody was out there and they were doing any touring at all, we probably had them at Niagara. There were cars that we didn't have make a pass or more down the track. So everybody got to see everything, and we had our first big NHRA race was in 65, and it was a regional meet, and we ended up with, it rained out.
Oh.
We had 9,007 people in through the gates when the rain came, and it was the biggest, even though it was washed out, it was the biggest one-day money-making event that NHRA ever had.
Wow. They
took a quarter off the top, and they were very quick. They weren't leaving without it.
Right.
And we had to do it again a month later, and it was just as successful. Actually, we had a few more people. The second month, a month later, the same type. It was a regional meet.
Yeah.
So we did run a lot of shows. So
now the property that the track is actually built on. Did your father purchase that property at the time?
Yes, it was two sections of property. One was 127 acres, and the other, total 197 acres total.
Okay.
and the track was 4,000 feet long and 60 feet wide, and a return road and pits.
Yep.
So, and when we went in there, we put all new fencing in. So originally, it had farm fence, 4 foot high, and in those days, you didn't have to worry about people sneaking in. They would drive along this 4 foot high chicken wire fence. It wasn't even, you could walk through it.
Right.
And we didn't ever. It was a different time.
Yeah.
And we put 4,000 foot of 7 foot high fence, and then all new chain link fence down each track side. And it became there was a little more of a game where kids were sneaking in, mostly kids.
Right.
And it was a big game. And I run into a lot of people now, and they would be 20 or 30 years younger than me, or 20 years younger. They'd say, "Oh yeah, we used to sneak across the airport and sneak under the fence." And it's a joke, but that's what they did.
Right. Now, I guess, when you first started, so when you got drafted, I'm assuming you were off in Korea.
No, believe it or not, I spent a wonderful 2 years at a place called Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I never got out of the fort.
Okay, well, good for you, or lucky for you, I guess I should say. But so when you first started, when you first opened the track, so you're away at the military. Your dad's running this show with Mr. Hammam, right?
Well, Jerry Hammam with my father, ran it for 2 years.
Okay.
And then they parted ways, and there was a group in there, and I can't think of all of their names, but there were 3 people, and they had a car called Deuce's Wild, a real pretty little comp car, and they were offered there was an arrangement made where they ran the track for a year.
Okay.
And that's when after that year was up, I came on scene.
Yep. Now, did you have? This was obviously, again, a different. Like you said, it was a different time than now. There was much more of a club mentality than there is today. Did you have a real payroll, I guess, of people that?
Oh yeah, we sure did. You would think as a drag strip, you had 20 or 30 people. On big races, we'd have over 100 people working.
Oh wow. Okay, so you guys were definitely spending some money, and I guess that's one thing I will say is that you can, overall, you've certainly did a really great job to be successful like you were. With the marketing and I saw earlier today there's a picture of John Lundberg up in the tower announcing, and he's just a legendary announcer, right? It's like obviously somebody, and I'm going to guess it was you, had a real knack for picking out talented people.
Well, John and I are still friends, and we talk mostly on Facebook now.
Yep.
And he's a year or 2 older than I am, and I asked him if we could do another event if he would come, and he said no, he's retired. So he said he would not do that. But he is probably, to me, the premier announcer in drag racing. He was so talented. He still is so talented.
Yeah.
And so knowledgeable. And in those days, most people didn't have a walk-around mic. Well, we've rigged up a walk-around mic where he could walk through the pits.
Okay.
And talk to whoever he wanted. And that was really something new. And because he knew everybody and everything, it was pretty interesting. So, yeah, John is a good friend.
Well, that's it's nice to hear that you still keep in touch with him. So now I'm guessing that he probably came on board a little bit later, once things started to really grow.
No. We got him right off. Probably, I know he was there we did the NASCAR Summer Nationals, which was the last race, last big race that NASCAR was involved in drag racing.
Yep.
And he was there for that, and we had also had him there, I think, in '65.
Okay.
So John has been there, and I laugh. I've got pictures that I think are posted that are taken from outside in the old tower, and you look up and the ceiling's falling in the old tower, and when you go up in the tower itself, you had to stand on the joist because the floor was falling in. It was pretty primitive, but that's the way it was.
Right. Now, sanctioning wise, so was the track originally NASCAR sanctioned?
No, it was built, and there were other sanctioning bodies that were.
Yeah.
Most of them were interested in being associated with you because you were doing promoting, and they wanted to be known as a competitor that ran at a pretty good track.
Yeah.
And so you had to buy them, but you bought the best that you could.
Sure.
On the best show that you could.
Yep.
So it was a two-way street, and we got a lot of coverage, and we worked very hard at getting. When the race was over, we had a photographer there. We would get the pictures back the same day, and we would get them to the Buffalo paper and the Niagara paper that night, and then all of the stuff would go out to all of the weekly drag racing magazines. We worked very hard at getting the coverage so that the people would be interested when we promoted the next big race. They go, wow, well, you had to be there.
Yeah. It's funny because Chris, what was the gentleman's name that we had on a few weeks ago? He was one of the motorsports reporters, and we were talking about just this topic. It was really about getting press coverage. And, he was telling us how that in a lot of cases, it's like pulling teeth from a press standpoint. It's like pulling teeth to try and get press coverage of the events. And, the good tracks are the ones that, the race is over, and by Monday morning, 8 a.m., they have all the results and pictures and everything else already on their desk, ready to go. All they have to do is basically, insert it into the newspaper, and they're done. So obviously that was something that you were really adamant about doing.
Well, we tried very hard. It's funny because our people were so good. I didn't have to do much.
Yeah.
And basically, if there was a problem that needed to be solved, they would come up to the tower, and normally, if it was something that had gone wrong, everybody was mad. I used to have a great big shepherd that was at the top of the stairs, and you could hear the steps, the people clanging up these metal steps. And they get up to the top, and this dog would be there. Well, you woke the dog up because she liked to sleep there. And they'd say, hey, Leonard, can we talk about this problem? And you didn't have to holler at anybody. And it really made it a lot easier.
Right.
And if we couldn't come to a conclusion that normally it was a car that was not fit to run or something like that, for safety, mostly for safety. And I would say, you're in now, you paid. Let me give you tickets for you and your crew. Any time the rest of the year, you're welcome to come back. We can't let you run today because whatever is not right.
Yeah.
But we'd love to have you come back. And as a rule, the people understood. And we had a pile of debris we had a set of scales where we weighed the bigger cars. And we had a pile of clutches and engine parts and stuff like that had blown up. And they'd say, well, why can't I run without a shield? And we'd say, well, you see that pile of debris down there? Well, that's why.
Yeah.
We don't want you to get hurt. Now, we were pretty lucky.
Yeah. Now, you said 65 was the first big meet that you had?
It was an NHRA regional. And that it was a real feather in our cap to get it. And then the next year, we didn't get a race. And we were really upset about it. We were at a meeting on the East Coast, and there were about 100 or so people there for this NHRA meet, and it was called Land of Ned, New England.
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
So Division I.
Yep,
and,
right.
When we didn't get a race, and so there's 150 or 200, however many people were there, we got up in the back, and we're shouting back and forth at Darwin Dahl, who was the divisional director. We said, Darwin, we didn't get a race. And he said, well, you got one last year. And we didn't know what to say. So Ian and I went out, and we had a brief we decided if we weren't going to get a race, we were going to run a race with somebody else. And so we went back in, and we were in the back of this huge room, and Ian shouted up to Darwin. He says, hey, and this is in the middle of this big, he's telling everybody all things that are going to happen. And so he shouted in the middle of this thing, hey, Darwin, we don't care where you put your damn race. We're going to show one. We're going to throw one that's even bigger than yours. We don't care where you put it. We slammed the door and walked away. And we drove right straight from there to NASCAR in Pittsburgh. That's where the head was in drag racing.
Okay.
And when we talked, a fellow's name was Ed Witzberger. We talked him into giving us the NASCAR Summer Nationals. Couldn't believe it. We had a lot. We had a lot of BS. I'll tell you.
Well, it's funny because Chris actually just showed a picture of Don Knight's dart that was actually my uncle's old super stock dart. And when I asked my uncle when he first got started and went to Ford and Chrysler and said, hey, give me a car. I'm like, how did you convince them? I'm like, at that point in time, you really hadn't accomplished anything. And it's like, I BS'd them, basically. It's like I told them I could do it, and I was great, and they bought it, and they gave me a car. And I'm like, and granted, yeah, after the first year or years, whatever it was, that he was successful, okay, now you can rely on your accolades to get you going forward. But it's like before then, it's like, how do you get someone to make that leap of faith? Well, I guess you got to be a good BSer.
Check this picture out.
You would bury them with BS.
I would say Chris just put up a picture of Jimmy Zakia's Anglia, the red Anglia. That
Yes.
I think
that car was always nice, but the car that I liked the best, he had a 33 Willys.
Yep.
That was beyond gorgeous. And he kept that, I think, only 1 year. But that car was to die for. It was so beautiful.
I would say I think the Anglia he owns again. I think he bought that and restored it.
He does.
That was, and I don't remember the story on it now, but that I noticed I had the rectangular headlights.
Right,
and
exactly.
The fender,
yeah, right.
We talked a lot about
that's
that.
right. You're 100% right. Yeah, I remember talking to him about the going from the round headlights to the rectangular headlights. That's right. You got a good memory, Chris. Not bad.
I'm not right a lot, but
the other car that was out there that was, and we ran some match races with Jimmy Oddie.
Yep.
He had an Anglia, and then he also had a funny car, and then he had
you just had that.
another blown car.
He had the Opal.
Yes. And the fellow that got his car, and then he and Jim restored that car to exactly as original. And he just died over this Christmas, which was really pretty sad because he's such a wonderful person.
Yeah, I saw that he went by the nickname of Trouble, right?
Oh, yes, and that may have been me that did that to him. I'm not sure, but it sounds like something I would have done. And there was another fellow, Ted Hartman, who ran who ran stock. He ran junior stock, and I thought I was the one that gave him the name Terrible, and so it was Terrible Ted Hartman. And there's somebody else that said that they gave him the name, and I don't know. But because he was such a tough competitor that I saw him so much, I said, this is terrible. So he became Terrible Ted Hartman.
That's funny. Yeah, John Cassiol, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I didn't know him, but I will say that I did see.
He was a wonderful fellow.
I did see his name pop up quite a bit in my Facebook feed over the last couple of days. People paying their respects essentially to him. He had restored the car, and I know Dan Delaney had a picture of him as the car just exited the shop after he lettered it, and seemed like he was a very well liked person.
I don't know. He's like me. He had a lot of people that disagreed with him, but on the other hand, I think I know he came up and introduced himself to me, and we became good friends. And I always I liked him. He was such a wonderful person.
Yeah.
And it was too bad that he died.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, definitely too bad. So I guess taking a step back and kind of going back to the track. So, would you call, I guess, the 68 to 72 years? Would those be the real heyday of the track?
I would say that 65. It started in 65 when we ran the the NHRA regional, and we started to do promotions, and it never changed. It was whenever we did a big race. I don't know if you ever heard any of our commercials, but if you want to, I have a website, Sunday Niagara Drag Strip, www.Sunday Niagara Drag Strip.
You beat me to it.
Okay, okay. And there's some commercials from '74 on there, and basically it's a loud commercial. And what we would say was, "You really need to be there. We'll find out where you live. We'll hunt you down and kill you."
When we were doing the ads and the promotions for what was then Black Rock Speedway, it's Outlaw Speedway now. When I was working there in 04, 05, that time frame, we referred back to the Niagara commercials that he's referring to and said those are always effective. We need to find a way to capture this and apply it to what we're doing. So yeah, that I was very familiar with that booming Niagara.
Yeah, Sunday Niagara. Yeah, right. And that's where that all came from, right, Mr. Johnson? The whole Sunday Niagara thing was from the ads?
Yes, and that was Ian Micklethwaite created that, and they were in WKBW. That's who we were working with at the time, and we were having a terrible time getting the sound right. And Ian kept saying, "Well, I want the Sunday Niagara, and I want it loud." And everybody was mad at each other. The fellows cutting the commercial plus Ian and I, and finally one of the people was cutting the commercials. He said, "Oh, you want something like this?" And he screamed, "The Sunday Niagara," and we said, "That's it exactly." He said, "Oh, okay, well you got it."
Wow,
so that's what we got.
Yeah, that's super cool. Now, I mean, you booked in. I mean, not all of the. Obviously, you ran the different races. Was the 65? Well, the Summer Nationals did that end up being the biggest race that you ever put on?
It was a 4-day race. It rained all 4 days. It was. We had one other race that we had a few more cars. We had one day we ran 611 cars plus the exhibition cars. So we would have had, I think we had nine exhibition cars and probably 2 wheel standing cars and maybe a couple of jets.
Yep.
We really had a lot of stuff. So we ran 600 some odd cars in 1 day plus the exhibition cars.
That's a lot of cars in 1 day.
Yeah, starting at 1 o'clock.
Right.
In the afternoon. So, we used to tell everybody, I'd say, if you have a problem, you need to get off the side of the track because I'm going to send another pair of cars down you. We actually did run cars.
Well,
I did. If you were down there in your dragster and you were packing your chute, you didn't want to be on the track because I'd run cars down. After a while, they figured it out, and nobody was on the track. They would drive past the end of the track to get away from me. But because we had so many cars, we had to run them like that.
Right.
And so we had these huge car counts, but it was not unusual to have 400 cars. And 400 cars, nowadays you don't see 400 cars.
Right.
If you get 200 cars at a show, that's a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
We've talked about that here and the struggles that the tracks at the local level have been having on their special events, and there's cases where they're begging for 32.
Right. Yeah. It's
worse than that is, and I've taken pictures. I've been at some of the local tracks, and right in the middle of the day, and I've taken pictures, and I have these pictures still on my camera. 39 people in the bleachers.
Right.
39 people.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they can run. I just don't understand that.
You're running everything off the back gate, and you're running everything off of the sponsor investment and the advertising partnerships that you've nurtured. Just because there's not that spectator base the way that it used to. We just had some pictures that were up from at the track, and the pits are absolutely packed, and there's just dozens upon dozens of people milling around, and those days are long since past. Hopefully there would be some sort of renaissance where they could get back to that.
Right.
I just don't see it given the track atmosphere, regardless of where you are. I mean, there's tracks right now that are running ovals where you could shoot a cannon into the stands and you would hurt a soul.
Well, I mean, part of the problem, obviously, with drag racing today, from a spectator standpoint, is that ET racing is just, it's hard for spectators to understand compared to the way that it used to be, which was, first one to the finish line wins. That's the way it goes. And, it's difficult, like I said, for people to understand ET racing as it is. And I think that it saved the sport from a competitive standpoint because competitors were leaving in droves, but now you have a sport that isn't all that interesting to watch.
This today doesn't happen that often.
So I say Chris just put up a picture of the stands absolutely packed. Now,
when we ran our 1965 race, it was the NHRA race. We were overwhelmed. We didn't have anywhere near enough seats, and we had people right out at the starting line. I mean, where they could reach out and touch the cars. And we ran the race that way until the rain came.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures where the people are right there, and but we could not get them back because there was no place to put them.
Right.
And a month later, we had another 4,000 seats, another bleachers for another 4,000 people.
Wow.
So.
Now, if you were to, I mean, it's easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but for special events, you could definitely see where you would definitely draw a lot of people.
Look at this.
On your normal weekly programs, I mean, how many spectators would you typically have on a normal weekly show?
Look at that.
Well, you'd still have 1,000, 1,500.
That's.
You'd have to. You couldn't make any money if you didn't have that many.
Well, and I guess that was a question I was going to ask too. I mean, did you, for the most part, always make money? I mean, because that's the incredible thing is you booked in a lot of shows, and to be able to book in a match race with some well-known people, obviously they're not coming for free, so you have to pay them to show up. All those great racers and match races and stuff like that you put on, were you always generally making money doing that?
We on the weekly races, when it got later in the year, it was tough to make ends meet.
Yeah.
But you have food and all of that stuff helps.
Yeah.
Anything if you can make $1, if you get $1, say for the food,
yep,
you should be able to make some portion of that $1 profit.
Yep.
And so we did slingers, and we did a lot of things that a lot of people didn't do. We worked very hard. We worked very hard at promotion, very hard.
Yep.
And it paid for us. And whenever even if people didn't know what the big race was going to feature, they knew if it was a big race that it was worth coming.
Right.
So when we said that there was a big race, it was a big race.
Yep.
Look at this.
But there's pictures out there where the people are wearing everything but parkas, trying to get warm, and the ground's all wet, but the bleachers are still full.
Right. So Chris is showing now a newspaper article that says, all I can read from here is roadblock.
It's a roadblock. This is from August of 1969.
Yeah.
The state troopers inspected 825 cars and issued 166 summons on Lockport Road near Walmore Road at Packard and Lockport Roads. And they took advantage of the heavy traffic.
Ah.
And it turns out that, Canadians couldn't legally drive here by New York state law. You have to be 18.
Oh.
And so they would come over there, and if they weren't 18, they got a ticket. They killed us. Well, it wasn't very funny, but the state police would come in, and so let's say they would spot check these people on a dead end road, and then check them again coming out. They just killed us. Yeah, well, 800. If you give 800 people a ticket, those people aren't going to be back. They cut our Canadian from over almost 60% down to about 35%.
Wow.
After what they did. And I finally called up the governor, and I think it was Rockefeller at the time. I'm not sure who it was, but I called up and I raised hell about it. And that picture is my picture. And I went out the bottom end of the track and drove up to get caught in this checkpoint. And when they saw me standing out beside my car taking pictures, they had a fit. They told me I couldn't do it. And I told them, go to hell. And then I went from there to Albany, and that was the end of it. But they hurt us terribly. Terribly they hurt us.
So,
but that was how the deals were back then. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Well, after Niagara was gone, everybody was saying, "Well, geez, I'm not selling the gas," and it was the Whistle Pig was down there. You just couldn't get a parking spot, and those days are gone.
Yeah.
Because they hurt us so badly on our accounts, particularly the Canadians.
Yeah.
They just killed the Canadians.
Yeah.
So
What
do you want to know?
The cut line on that picture said that the photo was taken by Richard Gwynn, which may or may not be true.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it also attributed one of the local representatives of the track described the police behaviors as harassment.
I wonder who that was, Mr. Johnson.
Well, I haven't. It could be a different picture. I'm not aware of it. But the one picture that's on the website is that I took that. And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, somebody took credit for your photo.
Yeah. Well, somebody else might have taken credit for your photo, but you were definitely quoted as that the police action was harassment, which, yeah, in general, I mean, it certainly was, right?
It was pretty tough.
Now,
pretty tough.
I guess, did you have, I mean, up until, so I don't want to jump too far ahead yet. So, I mean, 74, we know that the track closed. I mean, up until kind of that time, did you ever have any issues with the town or local governments? Was that a battle that you were constantly fighting?
Oh, yeah, it was originally the speakers were really loud and play strong, and that we resolved that we turned everything we could to make it as quiet as we could, and but it was always an ongoing problem on the noise and then traffic. On the big meets, we would hire a huge amount of most of the police at one time or another that worked in the area, whether it was sheriffs or Niagara police or state police, worked for me at one time or another. I never got a ticket for 10 years. Because I paid everybody's wages. It wasn't very. In those days, you get a $10 or $12 check, and that was it.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like much today,
right.
But back then it was adequate.
Yep.
So, but I made a lot of friends, police wise, and a lot of them worked for me, and they were really, really good people. I just can't say enough good things about the people that worked there. They just were so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really was lucky.
Now, from an entry standpoint, an entry fee standpoint, I know that the payout, and this is something that's still really legendary. When I talk to my uncle or I talk to Paul Dilcher, I mean, it's amazing for me to hear how much you guys paid to win, really on a weekly basis back in 1970 or 1971. What were you charging for a normal car to come in and race on a weekly basis at that point in time?
When we, spectator-wise, what we did was we had one race. We have been on the big races. We've been charging $5.
Yeah.
And on one race, we raised it to $6, and we were afraid people were going to turn around and leave. $6 general admission.
Yeah.
Well, that's not very much. Not very much. And then $1 for a pit pass, and probably $1 to run your car.
Yeah. Now, what about the competitors? I mean, the competitors. I mean, were they paying you $20 to race?
$7 to race.
Wow. But you were paying, what, I want to say $750 to win, like on a weekly basis?
I don't have the sheets right here in front of me, but we paid a lot more than that.
I mean, I remember being a lot of money. I mean, in 1970, $750 is a lot of money.
Yeah, it was, but we depended on spectators.
Yeah.
It's a different deal. They depend on the cars, and the cars pay. Oh my gosh, they pay so much money. I went to a show last year that was gassers, and I paid $20 general admission to get in.
Yep.
And so everybody had to pay a $20 bill to get in. I don't know what it cost to race.
Yeah.
But well, that's how they afford it. But there were no spectators, none.
Right. Yeah, and that I will say that is very unfortunate today. And obviously you have different tracks around here with different issues. I mean, the one thing that Niagara really had in spades was location, right? I mean, the location in Niagara was fantastic. Not only was
we were able to draw what they call in Canada the Golden Horseshoe, which included Toronto and Hamilton and London, and that was a good draw. And the Canadians were a lot easier sell than the Americans. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but they were. So the Canadians were a lot. They were a lot easier to please.
Well, I will say that even today, when I don't go up to Toronto Motorsports Park / Cayuga very often these days, but even today, I know when I go back, the spectators there are just absolutely incredible. They are just so crazed compared to the American spectators. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Canadian beer or what, but it really is incredible how enthusiastic the Canadian spectators are at the drag strip.
This is on the web page as well, and
yep.
I'm not sure.
That, I think, is the LA Dart. Was the LA Dart the wheel stander with the blown engine in the back?
Yep. I own half that car.
You what?
I own half of that car.
You own half of it, or owned like when it was a wheel stander?
No, I own half of that car
right now.
So,
yep.
Which half?
Well, if I could find it, I would take one half. I don't care which way you cut it, but I would take it. Bill Shrewsbury I toured Australia with Bill.
Oh, no kidding.
Shrewsbury was the LA Dart. And the other two that I toured, that were on the tour, was E.J. Potter, who's referred to as a Michigan Madman. He had a Chevy on alcohol that mounted crossways in his bike. And the other one was Jess Tyree, who ran a funny car. So, yes, I did tour with them.
So, were you doing this while you were operating the track at the same time?
No, it was wintertime, and I had been booking cars, and I called Shrewsbury to set our dates up, and he said, "Hey, are you free to go to Australia?" And I thought he was kidding. And so I called him back, and he said, "No, we leave day after tomorrow." And so we went for almost 5 weeks.
Wow.
That's
all right. So that obviously is a whole nother show, right? I mean, we're 48 minutes here into our hour.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do this. I talk too much. You ask me questions, and I'll try and give you answers.
Well, no, you don't talk too much. That's the great thing, is that you're a great guest. And
wait a second. Wait, I think. Is that in Australia right there?
Oh, maybe this might be an Australian flag. Looks like it might be on the coast someplace with an Australian flag in the background.
That could be.
Anyway.
Yeah, so I mean,
the fellow that put the race together, he's a fellow that did the cross-country run Cannonball Express.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I went brain dead. And he's a fellow that put the race together on this end of the world, and then there was another fellow that did the promoting on the Australian end, and I have pictures of him over there. We were on a boat, and with a whole bunch of girls.
Yes,
that was. So I can say this.
Yeah.
And he's such a nice guy.
Yeah, that was a picture.
I wrote to him and I said,
that was
"Should
the
I
picture we were
send
just
you
looking
a
at.
copy of this picture?" And he said, "No, I just soon not see the picture around here anywhere." So, Brock Yates. And he published a bunch of magazines out west. He's gone now.
He was a television announcer too, right?
He may have been an announcer. He owned most of a town called Christmas Village down in the southern tier.
Oh.
And nicest fellow you ever want to meet.
I say, well, we'll have to see if we can get him on the show if he's.
Not likely. He's been dead for a number of years.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, we missed our opportunity. So now, I guess because we're kind of running short on time, and again, I knew that this was going to happen, that, we're going to have you back on the show, but I do want to kind of, I guess, touch on at least, so the closing of the track. So 74 was the last season. So you ran the 74 season in completion?
Yes.
So what happened, I guess, then?
What happened is we got restricted out of business. We got restricted down to about 21 days a year. We couldn't start until 1 o'clock, and we had to be done by dusk. We couldn't run at night. So we had 21 days a year. You cannot run a business 21 days a year.
Nope.
And this was all due to the town, to the city of Niagara Falls?
Town. Town of Niagara.
Okay, the town of Niagara. Okay. So how long had you been fighting them about this, that this it finally had come to a head and you got to this point in time?
Well, it didn't get to a head. It just got to where we couldn't pay our bills.
Yeah.
And we just said, this is kind of stupid to run to not make any money.
Sure.
And we just said we can't do it.
So did people know this, I guess, when you were running in 1974, what was coming?
Well, when we were going to open in 75, I had made a payment around Christmas time to one of the landowners, $1,000, and about a month later, it was a woman, and she said, "Well, that's not acceptable." And we were late; we were always late.
Yeah.
And she said, "That's not acceptable." And she said, and she kept my $1,000, and she said, "I'm going to have my son run the track." And I said, "Okay." And the next day we went down there and took absolutely everything out of the track. We took all the bleachers out. We took all the fencing out. Took the piping out. I was really mad about everything. I chopped every place I could get at a wire. I cut it. And she came back and she said, "Oh, with an axe." It wasn't that I did it gentle. And she said, "Well, how the hell is my son supposed to run it?" And I said, "Well, he's at least got the pavement to start."
Right.
And it never opened.
So, at some point in time, then, did the property change hands?
I think that the Smith brothers were two of the people that owned it, and I think they're still alive, and I'm not sure, but there were two other people that owned a portion of the Smith brothers property, quarter of it.
Okay.
And they're gone, and then the property that the 127 acres, and we lived at the bottom end of the track.
Yeah.
My wife and I, and that 127 acres, I think, went for tax sale.
Oh.
We just walked away from it.
Wow. So
we were paying on it to buy it.
Right.
We never did actually physically own it. It wasn't paid off.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So obviously over the course of 75, the track doesn't open. Over the years, I can't tell you how many times I heard that Niagara is going to, open back up again. I
heard it too.
Did you ever think about opening another track or getting involved in something like that again?
We did a reunion at the Niagara Falls Convention Center in 1996.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had a friend, Fran Licata, and he and I. We tried to get Niagara opened, and I had $40 million. I had access to $40 million.
Wow!
And went to the town. I talked to all the neighbors, and I told them what we were doing. And I was told to open up and run it a year with a go-kart track. And my $40 million went away, and I got sick to my stomach and we left. We tried to open near Wilson. 100 acres down there, and we were told that we were not welcome. And we tried to get another 600 to 1,000 acres on the waterfront in Lackawanna.
Yeah.
And we kind of on the old Bethlehem Steel property.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was kind of a catch-22. We had to do something that we couldn't do, and the mayor wanted something. It was a deal where we couldn't do what they wanted us to do.
Yeah.
And there was $1 million worth of cleanup that had to be done more.
Yep.
And we were never able to do it. So those were the three we tried to do, and we just couldn't. And I think that probably now I wouldn't open a racetrack. The interest in motorsports is not there.
No, I will say that. I mean, it pains me to say it, but I mean, I think you can look at the spectator numbers and TV numbers for all the different automobile racing venues out there, and they're all generally down. So from an investment standpoint, I would say that I probably wouldn't do that either. I don't think at this point.
No, I would agree.
So, I mean, now, were all those plans that you had thought about doing, were those all after that 96 reunion that you were thinking about doing?
Yes.
So what happened, I guess, what did Mr. Johnson do from 1975 to 1996?
I was in real estate, rental, that type thing.
Okay.
And I tell people I puttered, and someday I figure out what I'm going to do with my life, but at this point I just don't.
Well, certainly, very well accomplished from a drag racing promotion standpoint for sure. I mean, and again, we haven't even we just scratched the surface with regards to the overall history. Chris has been fairly quiet this whole time because he's been frantically showing picture after picture, and I will say that's the one really great thing that we have, history-wise from Niagara is we have some really, really great pictures. But I mean, getting into the LA Dart, I mean, he showed at least one picture of Tommy Ivo's car. It's like I'd love to, hear more stories about him. And I know you had, every big fuel racer out there was at Niagara, and it's like I can only imagine, some of the great stories that you have to tell. And Chris doesn't even know this at this point.
My wife liked Prudhomme. So we had to have Prudhomme over there several times because she liked them.
Yeah. You have. You still have.
You have what?
How much, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it memorabilia, how much stuff do you still have from Niagara?
I have so much stuff you wouldn't believe. I was too lazy to throw it away.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've seen not canceled, I guess, checks that have been cashed and, returned to you. Yep. I mean, with, every famous drag racer's name you could possibly think of, I've seen pictures with let's call it autographs on them, right?
Sure.
As they endorse the checks.
Website's
I have contracts. I have checks. If you wrote a letter to me, if you were trying to sell me on me bringing your car in, I have that letter and your picture. I have everything, absolutely everything.
The website has pictures of postcards that were sent around.
Oh, yeah.
Their website has a letter from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where they're agreeing to pay for plane tickets for $68. I mean, the content on the website is just amazing. And again, all the photos that you saw tonight are from SundayNiagaraDragStrip.com, and that's Dean's page, and it was just amazing to thumb through.
I was very fortunate to have met so many nice people. Not many people in their lifetime can say that about a lot of their life's experience. I've been very fortunate.
Well, I think you would probably get that in return. That there's probably a lot of people that they would say that they were very fortunate to have been able to have dealings with you. And obviously, from a drag racing standpoint, we're all very fortunate that you and your family were. I guess visionary enough to say at that point in time that we wanted to open a drag strip because though it may never come back, it certainly is a big, big piece of drag racing history that was right in our backyard here.
And that's what's left.
Oh, that's sad to see that. I guess that's what's left of the tower at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty overgrown.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I know I was there a few years ago, and that's kind of what it looked like.
You meet more people at that track coming and going because everybody wants. That's true. It's just a lot of people just go visit. We don't know if we can get this thing put together for this summer. We're working on it, but it's a big deal to make room for a lot of people. It'll take a lot of work, but we got to get permission first, and we may not be able to get it.
And we haven't talked about it on the air at all, but I mean this thing that you're talking about is a potential reunion actually at the drag strip.
Yep, a gathering of liars.
Yeah. Well, I have to say,
everybody's quicker and faster.
Yeah, I have to say that I am very, very hopeful that we'll be able to pull this off, or you'll be able to pull this off. But
this is we thing.
Yeah, we. I'm not involved. You'll be able to pull this off. I guess I will stand by as an interested spectator and hope that this happens. Now you do have there is a Facebook page as well that you're involved with too, right? Not only the website.
Yeah, I've been adding pictures up until a day or so ago. I've been adding.
Yeah, and I think
3 or 4 5 pictures a day.
I should know the exact name. I can probably.
It's just Niagara Drag Strip, and it's Rod Watson's Niagara Drag Strip, I think, something like that, or Rod Watson, Dean Johnson. But Rod is doing all of the work, and he was here, and he lives in Florida now, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Sunday Niagara official. I say it's a Sunday Niagara official Dean Johnson Niagara Drag Strip Facebook page.
Yeah, but it's actually Rod Watson is doing everything. All I do is add pictures.
Well, that's okay. I mean, and I do know that you are very active adding pictures there. So, yes, if you want to see a lot of pictures there, you can see them on the Facebook page as well as the website. Mr. Johnson, I guess before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to say? Anybody you'd like to thank? Anything that we haven't covered that?
Well, I'll tell you, if you're interested, January, March, probably March, there's a video reunion that the Gasser Gang of Western New York puts on.
Yep.
And I'm a member of that. And we get 200 or 300 liars that get together. We have beer and pop and have a good time and tell stories. We have a good time, and it's a good beat. We watch videos and all kinds of stuff like that. And you'd have to watch the website, I think, to get. I don't know the date off the top of my head.
All right. Well, we will definitely see if we can find that and let the viewers know about that. And I'll try to definitely make it out for that. I know my uncle and I had come out previously, at least one year for that. I'll have to see if we can make it out again this year.
It's a lot of fun and a lot of good people.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that we can get you to commit to coming back on the show because, like I said, we barely have scratched the surface here.
That'd be my honor. You tell me what you want, we'll do it.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that.
We'll book you out for the next 3 shows.
I'm flattered you would even think of me. Thank you.
You bet. Well, we sure do appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you.
We'll talk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Night.
Take care.
There goes Dean Johnson. Good appearance right there.
I don't know what he has available. Like if we would be doing like an American Pickers style thing, trying to.
Man, that'd be a riot, right?
But yeah, I mean, I would love
to go there with a bunch of Jason Oldfield's money and try and buy stuff.
Oh, right. Well, it would be fun just to go there and with a camera and basically
go rummage for a while,
see all of the stuff that he still has, and I know that he has. A select few people that he's given certain things to, but it really is incredible the fact that I couldn't believe it when I saw the boxes of again, I don't know if they're canceled checks. I don't know what the right terminology is, but the boxes of checks. It's just really, really incredible to see that he still had all of that stuff. And he's on the Facebook page recently. He's mentioned the contracts that he's been putting up pictures of. Different contracts and letters. Okay, Mr. Johnson, as per our conversation, we're going to be bringing the U.S. Army funny car to your. That's probably a bad example because that was after the track closed. But U.S. Army funny car, sincerely, Don Prudhomme, and it's like that's just incredible stuff,
right?
Really incredible stuff.
And he's got it all just there,
just sitting there, yeah.
And his words, just too lazy to throw it out.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, really, we're all every once in a while the show he will basically. I don't know. I pray to God that they don't actually charge him to do it. But every once in a while, there's a car show where he will take boxes of stuff and just bring it out and just put it on display, and it's like it's super cool. I mean,
and some of the stuff hasn't had eyes on it for potentially decades.
Right. Yeah, I know he still has. I don't know if they're pit passes.
I want to be around when he goes through and he finds the stuff that he forgot about. It's like, hey,
right? Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I wonder. It's like, he says he took out every piece of wire and stuff like that. I'm sure he took some of that stuff to the scrapyard. But electronic timing systems and stuff like that. Did he keep that stuff?
Well, at that point, I guess it's the statute of limitation for possessing stolen property.
Right.
Passed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's long gone. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would have to assume that they own the property. He owned all the equipment, right? So.
Sure. What do you think? Cover all our bases?
Well,
there's still plenty of meat on the bone to come back to.
Oh man, yeah. We barely got started.
Again.
Right.
Again, we'll have to time it out right, and script it, and we'll say we're going to talk about this gap of time only.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about all right. This episode is the 1967 season.
Yeah. Well, that would give us multiple episodes from 67 up through 74.
Right, exactly. But yeah, the stories that I'm sure that he can tell, and I mean, again, we could just hundreds and hundreds of pictures. You could go through and just ask him one by one about, can you explain what this picture is? I mean, I didn't get a chance. I'm sure that at some point in time, because of the time frame, that probably somebody was killed out at Niagara due to an accident, and all the rocket cars and everything else. And,
well, we put up that picture of the Arfant's Mercury,
mm-hmm.
and that was one of many of the attractions that he talked about. And when you asked the question about why did the track close, I was running through the litany of things: finances, zoning. The references on the website was a lot about neighbors and things like that. It never even crossed my mind that potentially he could have said, well, somebody was killed.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about that until you just brought it up. So thanks for going to the dark side. On that happy note,
I had to say I didn't think about it either, but it was the old zone. It was really the old zoning thing. I mean, it's what really hurt Englishtown. It's what hurt Niagara. I mean, I think in general, it's what killed a lot of drag strips.
You don't have enough fingers to count the number of racing venues that were closed because of something like that.
Right.
It's fortunate, I guess, a little bit that you can still go see parts and pieces of it, regardless of the state of repair, I guess. But you can still go there. You don't have to go stand in the middle of aisle 16 in a Home Depot to say, well, I'm on the starting line of...
That is true.
There's still something there.
Yes.
And that glimmer of hope for the reunion is kind of cool, too. They had a bunch of those reunions at Lancaster.
Right, yep.
And just a chance to get back there has got to have him really excited,
I'm sure.
He's pretty. There's some trepidation to talk too much about it, and he's done a pretty good job of staying reserved with the excitement there. But inside, he's got to be jumping up and down to be able to get back.
Well, it's funny because I saw the thread that
and maybe they can race lawnmowers. I mean, there's plenty.
The pavement, actually, I mean, it's narrow because Mother Nature is encroaching on the sides of the track, but actually, it's not terrible. I mean, yeah, I don't think I'd want to take my Corvette down it, but I mean, if you said, would you, race your streetcar down it? Yeah, I'd do that. I'd feel comfortable doing that.
Sure.
Yeah, he was the one. I saw the thread about this whole potential reunion. I don't remember how it started. I want to say that it might have spawned off of a picture of the 96 reunion, but he was the one that, I think first even came up with, boy, it'd be really cool to have a reunion out at the track. And then as people got excited, he's like, ho, let's take a step back here because there's a lot that goes into doing something like this. We can't just have 1,000 people show up at the track one day and be like, oh, we're having a reunion party. So, it just goes to show from a professionalism standpoint that, this guy is used to doing these types of things. And
right.
I just hope that he can get the okay to do it because it would be cool to go out there.
It would be. Out there and right there along the side of the airport.
Right.
I didn't see any pictures of anything taking off and landing in tandem with a car going down the track, but I would love to see one if they exist. I think that'd be cool, right?
Oh, it would be super cool.
Well, you've probably seen the video from '84, I think, of Richard Petty going down the back streets of Daytona as Air Force One's taking off in the background.
Oh, right, yes.
I was waiting for that style picture, but
yep.
Of preferably a Roadrunner or a Dart. But yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get picky.
I'm sure one exists, and I mean that's certainly a very famous venue in location to an airport. I mean, Las Vegas. I guess it's not Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Las Vegas Dragway. I don't even know what the heck they call it.
The Strip.
The Strip. Well, yeah, I guess, the Strip at Las Vegas, right. That's the official name. So anyways, the Strip at Las Vegas, that actually is right next to the Air Force Base. So it's like they very often, when they're doing the television coverage for that, they show the fighter jets taking off and landing, going into the Air Force Base. It's kind of cool.
Have you ever seen a Hercules? Have you ever seen a C-130?
Oh, yes.
Those are like military equipment transporters.
Right,
They're
right.
40 feet tall at the tail.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, Seneca Army Depot was still emptying out, and we heard word that there was one coming in.
Yep.
And we went and we watched as one landed. And I mean, if you got to look up the pictures of this thing. I mean, the internal bay is like 70 some feet long and 9 feet wide and 10 feet tall. That can hold tons of people and equipment, and this thing's got these 4 giant props, and it banked in, and it made its approach, and it was just the noise, and you could see the lettering on the tires, because you're so close right at the end of the airstrip. It was really cool. So I mean, to have one of those camped out in the background, for a little while, or to accidentally almost land on the track.
Well, say the flyby, right?
That's intimidating.
And I wonder, it's like when that was happening and he was there watching, he's like, all right, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Okay, now we got a problem. He definitely thinks the drag strip is the runway. This is going to be ugly. And okay, thank God he pulled up and
quick, shut every light off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, pull up, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Definitely pretty cool. But I'm sure there's pictures all over the place. I have to say that I'm not going to encourage anybody to go out to Niagara now, because it still does butt up against U.S. government property.
There's 2 reasons. One, it butts up to U.S. government property. 2, someone owns it.
Yes, somebody does own that. That is correct. Yes, it is strange though. I don't know what road it is. You go down to the road, and then all of a sudden it's like, is this still a road? And it's like the next thing you know, you're on the drag strip. There it is. And yes, it is trespassing officially. But yes, at the same point in time, like I said, there is an Air Force base there. And if you get too close, the MP will show up. It's like, what are you doing, son? Do you know you're on restricted property? You're getting a little too close for comfort here?
I do now.
Right.
And I am gladly leaving.
Right. So... yeah, don't anybody go there until we actually have
confirmation
that this is going to be going ahead. But hopefully it does.
And also, watch out for leaving. I hear the troopers like to check tags.
Yes, exactly.
That newspaper clipping was ridiculous.
I mean, the comment about more use after the track closed. I mean, there were a lot of people that took cars out there and, hey, you know what, I just made a change and I need a late night test session, so let me take my car out to Niagara and go make a test pass.
What I was alluding to when we started was that we didn't have any sanctioned events. There's no organized points. Right. There's no purses and anything. And he went a very different direction with it. And again, this is something I never even really considered, because I thought perhaps it had changed hands. It was run by somebody else, but it had closed, and then it just sat there. And after that, put the big padlocks on the gate, and nobody can get to it. You can look at it from afar, but it was quite the opposite, where if you can find a win, have at it.
Right. Yeah. Just such a shame, because it was just such a great venue, fantastic location. Now, granted, I mean, it wouldn't be a super track, like Bruton Smith's tracks of today,
Well, I mean, but at the same time, though, when Lake Mokatac closed up in Pennsylvania, it's not like street stock guys were showing up there on a Saturday and making laps on it without anybody knowing.
Yeah.
It's not like that, but it sure happened there.
Oh, it did happen there. Yeah, it did happen there.
He was a street racer to start with. That was cool, too.
That is cool. I did not know that. I'm glad we were able to touch on some of the history, because I did not know, that. I had no idea how he got involved in that.
Yep. 15 minutes of rehashing what he just told us.
Yeah. Of course, all our viewers are gone. They're like,
yeah,
okay, bored.
It's like, well, Dean's gone. Click.
What are these guys going to talk about?
Nothing of consequence. That's going to do it, I guess, for episode number 54. Stay tuned to the Facebook page. Again, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll let you know when Dean and the litany of other guests that are planned through the course of 2019 will be on. We'll be keeping you posted with all of the show listings, etc., the links on there on YouTube. Feel free to hit the subscribe button and let us know that you like what you're hearing about. That is going to do it for us here at the North Park Building at Academy Square. We will see everybody again next time. This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.